Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's webinar. As always, we're just going to leave it just under a minute, just to wait for everyone to join us and to settle in. Okay, so just a couple of seconds, and I think Barbara and Catherine were ready to start. So thank you for joining us for this afternoon's webinar. We've had 6 months of Brexit now. So what has happened so far and what does the future hold? I think this is a really interesting subject. There's, I think, quite a lot that's been happening over the last 6 months and quite a lot of changes again for the future. Just to let you know that the recording of this webinar will be available post-webinar and also the slides. If you do have any questions, could you please put the questions in the chat section, and then we'll get to those towards the end of today's webinar. So just to introduce today's speakers, Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. Thanks, Melanie. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Catherine Barnes. I am EMEA Counsel for Globalisation Partners. Globalisation Partners are, as I'll come on to in a second, we deal with hiring across many different countries across the globe. And my responsibility is making sure that we hire compliantly and that we deal with all employees efficiently in line with the law. So we deal with a lot within the EMEA region. And as my seat as EMEA Counsel, I am a UK lawyer. I have been for over 10 years and been specialising in employment law and specifically European employment law. So we've seen many changes and still a wonderful region to be working in.
Thanks, Catherine. Oh, sorry. Barbara, I skipped you then. Barbara, over to you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. My name is Barbara Mangan. I'm based in Ireland. I'm the Global Audit and Compliance Manager in Globalisation Partners. I'm a HR professional with a legal background, and I've worked in HR for about 15 years. Thank you.
So, Catherine, can you just give people an overview of Globalisation Partners?
Yeah, definitely. So many people haven't heard of us previously, but what we do is we are an employer of record platform. So we will hire individuals to work for our clients well, around the world. So we've got over 170 countries that we have entities set up in. And if a client wanted to hire quickly and compliantly, but didn't have the basis in order to set up an entity in whichever country they were looking at, they'd come to us and we would hire for them. So our platform is legally compliant in all countries that we work in, and we make sure that every single employee is managed from start to finish, and that includes payroll and benefits and anything else in between. Anything that you would expect in any one country is compliantly dealt with through our platform. So that is what we can do for any clients wishing to expand abroad.
Thank you very much. Okay, so a lot's happened, as you said. I think we're all starting to notice some sort of effects with Brexit or post-Brexit Britain. There's been many changes in international relations, foreign policy, and rules of doing business in the UK, which have baffled employers and employees. And actually, I was talking about it this morning, it's still baffling a lot of employers. So what does the new Brexit Britain look like? Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Melanie. I think Britain's relationship with the EU has now opened a new chapter. I think the aim for Britain is to have a more global Britain with stronger ties with the US and other democracies like Australia, India, South Korea. Recently, there was a survey by the British Foreign Policy Group, and in that survey, they found that less than a quarter of Britons believed that the deal that they got with the EU was the best framework. So the majority of British people are not satisfied with the post-Brexit deal or arrangement that's in place. However, there are advantages due to the deal. Britain is free now to pursue its own independent foreign policies, which should be good for the country. And according to the survey as well, the majority of respondents felt that the partnership and relationship with the EU was more important than a partnership with the US. So a lot of feelings there regarding the actual deal itself from the British people. I'll pass it over to yourself, Catherine. What do you think?
I was just going to add something onto that, Barbara. So on top of that, in terms of not only it being baffling for the employers, I mean, employers need to figure out what changes they need to make to their internal rules and regulations from an employment law perspective. And this is having a huge impact on companies. Companies are getting it wrong, unfortunately. So that we are seeing that a lot. And you know, it's the impact that it's having on business is from a financial point of view. But you know, and there have been unfortunately a number of articles about this with regards to some companies that have unfortunately not done what they needed to do and have had to close the doors because it's really important. On top of that, the end of the free movement of people, that has had a huge impact on companies not really understanding how employees can travel in and out of countries. I know we've had COVID, so the travel has been minimal, thankfully. If COVID didn't exist, I think a lot of companies would be in a lot of hot water, because understanding the different permit requirements, visa requirements, you know, just to travel into countries, you know, from the UK, it is just unfortunately so confusing. And on top of that, I've also noticed there was an article came out today from the government with regards to travel. So the UK government are trying to agree with certain countries that there are, you know, like a travel bond. So you travel from one country to another for a certain period of time without any restrictions, similar to the relationship that the UK had with the European Union. However, not every single country, you know, what countries are going to sign up? What countries are going to allow UK people to travel into, you know, that specific country for a specific period of time? I think we just leave it as it is. And if you know, certain countries have a permit or a visa that we need to apply for in order to go in there for business travel, then we need to do that. I don't think you know, the UK government should try and to, you know, stir the pot and just make what is already confusing even more confusing. And you know, there's so much going on for employers to understand at the moment, on top of the new immigration system, that I think, you know, streamlining, you know, the specific issues or the specific considerations for business is something that needs to be done. But I think, you know, I know we've spoken about this before, Melanie, with regards to the global mobility. You know, that is a huge thing, and it's having a knock-on effect, a significant knock-on effect to employers. On top of that, I think from a recent survey, only 14% of employers were clear on the new rules of employment in employing EU citizens after December 2020. And that is, I was quite surprised by that figure. You know, there's a lot of publicity ongoing at the moment with regards to the EU settlement scheme. So the 14%, that was a little bit concerning for me, really, that employers didn't really understand what they needed to do to hire EU citizens in the UK. Touching back on the EU settlement scheme, that this is obviously a crucial factor. Given that the deadline for making an application under that scheme ended on June 30th. So, you know, understanding all these changes, and they are fundamental changes to an employer, has been significant. So I feel for employers out there who are trying to meander the different hurdles and things that they've got to overcome in order just to hire a person. So yes, that's my observations, Barbara. So thanks for looping me in there.
I think now I'm travelling a bit more, I'm noticing more and more staff shortages, especially with hospitality. And I was talking to a client this morning who would traditionally employ payroll administrators from EU countries and get them to work in the UK. And obviously they're now having issues with that. So it's definitely changing.
It's that time of year as well, isn't it, where we have seasonal workers coming into the UK. There's been a huge impact on that. So and that's having a knock-on effect to the things that we buy every day. Certainly in the summer, our summer strawberries are the best in the world. How many of those are gonna find their ways into supermarkets? Yeah. It is a significant issue, and as a country, we are seeing the impact of the withdrawal of the free movement, certainly significantly. There's also another. Just touch on this quickly. There's another issue that was highlighted this week in the press. So because of COVID, we're allowed to travel to the green countries, amber countries, possibly, and a number of people in certain countries were not permitted to go into specific countries because they didn't have the relevant immigration documentation. So there were a couple of people I noticed on, I can't remember which channel it was, they were being interviewed, saying that they weren't permitted to go into that country. And there's this whole thing now that's going to start opening up because of the fact that we can travel a little bit. And UK individuals are not doing what they need to do in order to make sure they can actually go into the country, which I thought was quite interesting. But obviously with everything going on over the last couple of weeks, it hasn't been widely publicised. So keep an eye out for that. I think it's going to certainly explode.
More changes.
Yeah.
So this brings me to my next question. The deadline, which you previously mentioned, the deadline for the EU settlement scheme has passed. So what does the future look like for EU citizens in the UK who've missed the deadline? Before you answer this, I didn't see a lot of news or media on this, sort of in the main press. Did I just miss that, or has it been a bit quietly publicised?
It has been advertised. There's adverts during peak viewing times, I think, saying that asking or confirming that people needed to apply for the EU settlement scheme by a certain date. But since that date has passed, I don't believe that I've seen anything since that date, really.
So what do you think the future looks like then, Barbara?
Yeah, as you say, under the UK withdrawal scheme, there is the settlement scheme. And if you were in the UK for less than 5 years, you get pre-settled status, or more than 5 years, you get settled status. At the moment, 5.6 million have applied through that, but only 5.2 million applications have been processed. And as you say, there may be a lack of knowledge of the fact that people need to apply. So perhaps others haven't actually applied yet. And it's obviously closed the deadline. So, I mean, they are due to be issuing formal letters with 28 days notice. So it is really important that people are aware of what they need to do and their rights under that. Catherine, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so, additionally, the risks with that, because of the backlog you mentioned, Barbara, with individuals who meet the criteria to remain under the settlement scheme, but they haven't had that certificate, they're at significant risk of losing healthcare and other benefits that they're entitled to, in the UK. And, given the UK's history with regards to immigration, it is a little bit of a concern that, they have got this huge backlogs. There's thousands of people who don't know whether they can remain or not, and I couldn't imagine living in that situation. And from July, people from EU countries must show that they've been granted settled status or pre-settled status via an online portal before they can rent, work, or claim benefits in the UK. So the fact that there are so many people that haven't been given that that information is significant. It's disastrous, really. Given that this was something that was implemented by the UK government, and they just don't seem to be ready for, well, they were not ready for the applications that were being made. As I said, the impact, not only is it on healthcare and benefits, people could lose their homes if they don't have those certificates. They could be subject to fines. They could even face deportation, which is, it's awful to think that it could come to that. So yeah, it's not great. I think the best thing that individuals can do is just be open, with their employers, and let them know what has happened, and just continue to chase up, the application, the government for the immigration service for their application, and certainly their certificate, just so that it can get updates as to where they are. Everything is online, so you can check online. And also, when you do get the certificate, make sure that the immigration status does have the specific information on there that proves that you can work in the UK, because some certificates have been coming through and they are incorrect. So there's an appeals process which takes a little bit longer. And also EEA citizens will have to demonstrate their immigration status to the relevant authorities if required. So it's really important to understand the information that you need, that you provided to the immigration service, your online credentials. Don't make sure that they're written down, that you don't lose those, because that is the everything to the application, and that you individuals just keep their employers informed as to what's going on. They can also share the online information, so they can share their online credentials with the employer if they choose to do that, so the employer can check for themselves the status. So that's my thoughts on that one. It's not great at all, and people shouldn't be put in this situation. So it's just trying to figure out how employers can support employees who are in this situation, because it must be the most stressful situation anyone could ever be in, really, in my view, one of these stressful situations.
Are you happy to take a question just on that? So we've had somebody just ask, what should an employer do during that process?
Again, just having the dialogue with the individual, and making sure that they have applied, and obviously if they're giving you the online information, or if they give their consent for you to take a look at it, sometimes it makes sense, because that takes away continually chasing up with that individual. I would just ask the individual if they would be willing to give the employer the online details. You can only obviously access it with permission. Try and get that permission in writing as well, so that you've got something to come back on if there's something further on down the line that the employee's not happy with, and just continue to have that dialogue and support the individual, because this is a brand new scheme to the UK. There, as we can see, there are teething problems, and there are going to be many more. So try not to be too hasty into making a decision. And just try all that you can do to support the individual. There's also a helpline number for employers with the Home Office. So I'd go on and either call on there, go onto the government website, just get as much information as you can, and just be informed, and just try and support as much as you can. It's a difficult time. I totally appreciate that, but it's also difficult for the employee as well. This isn't their doing. And just try and encourage them to make sure that they do everything they can. And yeah, that's the best advice I could give in relation to that. I hope I've answered that question.
Okay, thanks very much. Right, so we're going on to our first poll question. So Zoom have changed the way that we do polls, so fingers crossed this will run nice and smoothly. They always change it. Okay, so the first poll is, as employers, are you confident that your EU employees will attain a status under the settlement scheme, yes or no? So I'm just going to launch this poll now. Can you see the poll on the screen?
Yeah.
Yes, fantastic. So I always have like a magic number that I would like to get to. So hopefully we'll get to that soon. Guys, what do you think will be the answer to this? What's the highest percentage, yes or no?
Oh, I'd like to be really, really optimistic and think it's like 80%. Yeah, I'm going to go for a high number, but my gut tells me it's going to be less.
So on a yes, 80%
yes.
on yes.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
I think 60. I think it'll be lower. I don't know if I'm pessimistic.
Okay, we'll shut it in a few seconds. So those of you that haven't voted, if you could just jump on now, just yes or no, that'd be lovely. Okay, so we've got a few people sneaking in now. Right, I'm going to end the poll now. And we have 86% yes and 19% said no.
Awesome. Very good.
Good. That's nice and positive.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. It's really good. That's the first time I've seen live data with regards to, and understanding, certain things that are going on. So that's great to know, really.
Oh, good. That's good. Okay, so how should companies assess their overall systems and processes for compliance in the post-Brexit world? So Catherine, over to you on this one.
Yeah, it's not going to be straightforward, guys, but we're just going to try and make it as easy as we can to follow. So, obviously with Brexit, it marked the birth of the UK's new points-based system. And, because of everything that, was said during the referendum and subsequently, they needed to bring in a new immigration system, and it was necessary to a certain extent. And obviously that new immigration system has distorted, the free movement of rights, because obviously that's ended for UK individuals going out and vice versa, and people coming into the UK. So UK employers wanting to recruit migrant workers need to understand the immigration regime, and in particular how the changes affect the recruitment of EU nationals. It is extremely complex. So if you are if you are a company that are looking to hire EU nationals to come into the UK, make sure you understand what it is you need and understand what you're looking for and the repercussions, because there are a couple of different avenues. So to qualify, an individual can qualify for skilled worker visa. So employees who want to move to the UK must score a total of 70 points in order to have the ability to come into the UK under a skilled worker visa. There's also, employers can also apply to the immigration service for what's called sponsorship. So you can become a sponsored employer. There's an application process for that. Unfortunately, it's not a quick application process. Depends on, you can pay an additional fee to shorten the application process, but you need to make sure that you know what you're looking for. So you know what your hiring plans are over the next 12 months and how many visas you're going to possibly need, and how the immigration service are also going to want to know how you support those employees once they come into country. So contracts, policies and procedures, all the great HR stuff that you've got in place, they're going to want to know what that is. And they're going to want to make sure that whoever comes into the UK is correctly and properly managed by the employer. The immigration service will look into it, and as part of the application process, you will need to provide a whole raft of documentation to support that application. So there are a couple of avenues. Make sure that, as I said, you know what you want to do, what your 12-month projection is going to be like, and try and figure out what the best route is for you to get those individuals into the UK. Right to work checks. And Barbara and I have been working on this for quite some time, because there's been so many changes as of late. So following the introduction of the new immigration system, employers need to carry out right to work checks on all new recruits using a 3-stage process. So that's checking and copying relevant identity documents. It's been in the UK for certainly since I can remember, certainly for the last 20 years. I don't want to give my age away. And yeah, so it's always been there, but obviously because of COVID, there was some changes, because the face-to-face checking of the documentation made it a breach of the current policies and procedures brought in by the government to combat COVID. So as of the 30th of June 2021, when conducting right to work checks in respect to EU and EEA or Swiss nationals, employees need to ensure that they've obtained the individual's passport or national identity card and any other permit or any other visa documentation that is applicable to that individual. So you just need to make sure that you've got all the relevant documentation. As of 1st of July, the individuals now must provide proof of permission to be in the UK under the EU settlement scheme. So it will be, as I mentioned just now, a certificate, and that certificate will have, what that individual is permitted to do. And it's highly likely, although I can't speak for the millions of certificates that have been given out, it's highly likely to all be an online process. So you just get given an online login details, and you just pop online and just check that certificate. So you might not have a hard copy, but you might. It depends what the individual has specifically applied for. So just be aware that those dates, 30th of June, 1st of July, those are the two big dates that you just need to be aware of. I think I've covered everything there, Barbara, other than possibly licensing.
Yeah, I can definitely go through that. So it'll be the first time that we will have to have a license to employ EU citizens in the UK, and that's from January 2021. The good thing about anyone that's gone under the EU settlement scheme is that when they do go for a right to work check going forward, they'll have an online status, whereas there are many other people who won't, Irish and UK citizens who won't actually have an online status. So your right to work check will have to be a physical document that's shown to the employer, which is much more difficult than sharing a code. And also for people that are traveling as well, it's important that employers support these people as well. I think it's all about supporting your population and your employees at the moment. And the UK government actually has a Brexit checker tool. It's online, you can put in the countries you're going to, and it gives you a personalized list of actions, whether it is that you're allowed to drive in that country or you're not, or anything you need to apply for to go to that country. So I think that's really good. But I think it's definitely thinking ahead right now. And I think even with your roles that are coming up in the future and what you feel you're going to have a shortage in, that you develop your early talent and develop those skills within, if you can at all, so that people can develop into any opportunities that you have in the future.
I think as well, just listening to what you're saying there, Barbara, I think inevitably the government are going to have to change their position with regards to that, because I mean, for companies to project what type of visas they need for the next 12 months, you can only do that by looking at the last 12 months, and we've had COVID, so we haven't got that data to rely on. So yeah, I know that as we've seen from the many articles and interviews that have been had over the last couple of months with regards to this, the government are changing their position all the time, and also as you mentioned, the right to work checks for Ireland and UK employees. I think by the middle of next year, March next year, or the end of this year, everything's going online. So keep an eye out for that. So we might, instead of us having, the passport documentation, I think the government are working really hard to try and get our documentation online as well, so that we will in time be able to share a code. There was a document that came out from the government, I think it's about 2 weeks ago, that mentioned it. So fingers crossed we can, we'll, you know, it's going to be streamlined for employers, which is what I'm trying to get at, rather than having paper online. Hopefully they'll streamline it for us to make it easy.
That will make a huge difference. I mean, a lot of companies aren't working from offices right now. So it's difficult to have that face-to-face check and take a photocopy of it. And not everybody wants to courier a passport to a company. So I think that will make a huge difference on both sides, both for employees and employers.
Yeah, I definitely hope the government are able to put this in place. I mean, it's just in theory, it's just an extension. But yeah, we'll see. Watch this space. I think would be good.
Bring it into the 21st century, hey?
Yeah, definitely.
So, as we all know, global payroll is already a complicated process. So what are the additional challenges on payroll due to Brexit, and how can companies navigate them compliantly? Is that over to you, Catherine?
Okay, so
sorry,
that would be great. No, it's okay. Thanks, Barbara.
I think the transfer of data is important. I think having specific clauses to transfer data between the EU and the UK. We all know about the GDPR, and the EU or the UK actually got an adequacy ruling there very recently, which will let us transfer data in between digitally the EU and the UK. But it's important to use standard contract clauses and to review your payroll processes as well, and where data is and isn't going, I think is very important. What do you think, Catherine? Sorry, I interrupted you there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So I mean, it would have been interesting to see if we hadn't had that adequacy ruling, but you know, given that it was a European GDPR you know, matter, we all follow the same rules, so it would have been interesting to see if we didn't have that adequacy. But anyway, moving on from that, I think understanding the data flows is you know, it's absolutely crucial. So identifying and note down any data transfers that take place between the UK and the EU within any one business, and just understanding that flow is crucial. And as well, possibly looking at the third parties that you're using. So if you're using a third party for anything, an accountant or whatever it may be, have asked them to do the same thing, so they can see what their data flow is like, because it doesn't just stop at you, it goes a little bit further. So understand that as well. And also using a centralized payment process. Whilst global payroll has been the same payroll process that's been going on for many years, what makes it complex is the very tax laws, as you know, most of you are aware. Certainly for each country, an expense in payroll in different units of measure is quite complex. So many global companies still manage multiple bank accounts in different currencies, and can quickly become overwhelming. So again, that's, you know, look at the processes, and then alongside that, look at the data flows, because that's going to give you an understanding as to where there could be a flaw, really. But yeah, I would just note it down, and you can get a flow chart. Love a good flow chart.
Yeah, do love a flow chart. Okay. So in addition to the changes we just discussed, are there any new upcoming changes that companies, I feel like there's going to be loads of new upcoming changes that companies need to be aware of. So Barbara, do you want to start off on this one?
Well, I think it's going to be increasingly difficult for UK companies to get employees to the UK, and especially at the lower salaries. Catherine, you spoke about the points-based system, and it's very difficult to get somebody early in their career on a lower salary into the UK through that system. So I think it's really important to look at the supports that the UK are providing, whether that be training and apprenticeship schemes or early talent schemes that you can use for that early talent. I think it's also a good opportunity to look beyond the UK, maybe look globally. It's it's the same process now, whether you hire within the EU or whether you hire globally, to look at hiring globally and look at other options like employer of record if you don't have an entity in a country, so that you do open up that market and you can get the best talent for the role. What do you think, Catherine? Have you anything to add to that? Or?
Yeah, I echo you, Barbara. I mean, what COVID has, one of the benefits of COVID, if not the only benefit, is that it's forced companies to really look at their remote work policies and processes and procedures, and companies have invested millions and millions of pounds, dollars, euro into having an infrastructure in place. So I think the future is going to be more of a hybrid work forum, whereby people work from home as well as work in the office. So as Barbara said, in terms of looking at the global talent, any employer's talent pool has now become so much wider because of the fact that we can work from home. And if you've got an infrastructure in place within a business that allows one person to work from home, that person could be working from home in Spain. So it's understanding, what, as a business, what do you want? What expertise do you want? What works for the business? What doesn't work for the business? And do you need to be in the UK? So it's allowing companies to really start to expand outside of the UK. And we are seeing that here at Globalization Partners, that companies that were thinking about it previously are now doing it, because the talent pool has just got that much wider, that much bigger. So yeah, I echo your notes on that, Barbara.
Totally. I mean, we have a skills shortage in areas like IT and engineering, and you find these great talent pools in countries like Russia, and you have that wide market now. If they're working from home, they're not going to be beside you in the office anyway, so you can work with people all over the world. And I think that's probably one of the benefits of COVID, that we are seeing that.
Yeah, I don't have many more benefits.
No, me neither. None at all, actually.
It's pushed us into different thinking, hasn't it, I think?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on to our next poll. Okay, so let's launch this one. Okay, so despite Brexit, will you consider expanding your company internationally to new markets? Yes or no? So just going to run this. What do you think the result's going to be on this?
Well, given what we see, I'd say yes. I think it's going to be quite a big yes, because, as I said, there's companies that were thinking about it, have just gone ahead and done it. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
I think we have done some research just recently, and it feels like people are seeing it as a blip, just a blip on the, and then it will get back to normal at some point. No,
can't see it.
Okay. So just leave it a few more seconds. I'm going to shut it. So if you haven't voted, if you could just quickly vote now, that'd be lovely. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. And we have yes, 83%, no, 17%. So what do you think of those results?
Yeah, they're not surprising. I think that reflects what we are seeing here in the business. I mean, no one knew what was going to happen when COVID first came on our radar, and I think every company across the world was braced for worst case scenario in terms of where they'd be. And some companies have, unfortunately, been at the end where they've had to close, but other companies have had to have done a pivot and changed the way that they work. And as you were saying, Melanie, a research paper that you looked at, said that it was a blip. I really can't see it. I can't, because, and the reason being is because companies, certainly UK companies, have always had that little bit of a reluctance to engage with remote working, working from home and all this. It used to be really, companies used to avoid it, but now that we didn't have a choice and companies can see how employees preferred that, and how more engaged they were, and how they've got, a better, a better system in place, or they've invested, as I said, in the infrastructure. Millions and millions of pounds have been spent on putting this infrastructure in place. I don't think any business that have spent a significant amount of money on specific infrastructure is just gonna let that go. And it's just better engagement for employees. Some employees thrive under working from home, others don't, but it's having that ability to pick and choose and manage that process with your employees. I'd be very, very surprised if it does go back to normal, and in the way that I say normal, the way it was, the way that we saw it before the pandemic. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I think we'll be looking and learning over the next couple of years, that's for sure.
Definitely.
We're definitely in a change of history, aren't we, with the way that we work? So
yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
So we're just coming on to our final question before we open it up to the questions with everyone that's attending today. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. Well, I hope Brexit isn't all doom and gloom. Will leaders require a new mindset to succeed in post-Brexit Britain? So Catherine, over to you on this one.
Yeah, so it isn't all doom and gloom, and I think we've mentioned one of the, a couple of the positive ones, specifically, the remote work era, if I can term it that, where, as I said, we're all working from home, or we have been, and I think the mandate has just been removed from the government to do that as of in a couple of weeks' time. And yes, we are going to have to see how employers will react to that. But I think it's just been generally a positive situation for a number of companies. And you've had the big hitters like Google and companies that can really work remotely, closing down offices all over the world. So I don't think that's going to happen. But I think we will have that hybrid work relationship with our employers going forward, so home and office, and as well possibly other parts of the world. I mean, is there a need to be in your home country for some companies? Possibly not. So there are several regulatory changes for employers to be aware of if you employ UK citizens, and we've covered a number of them, as I've said. So we've got the immigration issues that we've discussed, but I think that is certainly going to level off soon. I'd love to put a date on it, or I'd love to put a timestamp on it, but it is going to level off. It has to. I mean, the government, the underlying principle of one of the reasons why the immigration regulations came into being was also to incentivize certain areas of industry coming back to the UK, and to be a tech hub, the UK being a tech hub and things like that. I can't see in the current format that the UK government are really promoting that. But I think, when there are a couple of tweaks and changes to the immigration system, which will undoubtedly have to happen and will happen, as we've already started seeing, things will settle down a bit. But make sure that you understand, as a company, you understand what your requirements are, because they are quite strict, and there's very little room for maneuver if you do get them wrong. If your company isn't based in the UK and does not have a legal branch in in any country, really, there are some significant hurdles to jump over. So if you are wanting to hire outside of the UK, then come and talk to us. Talk to an employer of record first, see if it's fit for your business. If not, then look to hiring individual lawyers in that specific country in order to possibly look at setting up your own branch or your own entity in country. It is extremely costly. That's why I'm saying, if you go to a global employer of record first, see what they can do for you, see what you need to do to start to get a feel for the specific requirements in country, and then you can make that informed decision further on down the line. One other great thing about the global employer of record model, it allows companies to really test markets in country. So if it's a brand new country, what we do for a number of our clients is, our clients are either based somewhere in Europe, they will come to us and hire someone in the US or hire someone in the APAC region, just to test the market of their business in those different areas. So they don't have the cost of setting up those entities in any of those countries, really. They test the market through us and we take all that responsibility. So on top of that, acting as administrator, payroll manager, or regulatory assistant for companies expanded internationally, we deal with all that. So and the employer of record is the extension of your business, and it will do everything from the employment contract to payroll to having the P45 issued and anything else in between. So that is something that companies can look at, but just make the most of the changes as well that we've all been through, and just learn from that. Just take time to reflect. And as a company, are you going in the direction that is good for the company? Are you not? What are your options? Just weigh up all your options before you make any one decision. And if any of you that have attended any of the webinars that I've been on previously, please check your HR policies and check all the changes that that your policies and your own internal documents reflect the changes that you're making in the business. So if you are looking at remote working, put a remote work policy in place, just so that people know where they stand. And it's easier then for companies to manage individuals when things don't go so well, because it does happen, and we're under no illusion of that. So I think that those are the main things, really. I think that I would just focus on in terms of future changes.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're just going to open it up to questions now. So obviously this is quite a large topic, and so if there's any questions that would need to be taken offline, please let me know, and then I can forward those on to you, and then we can share them afterwards. So do you have any advice on organisations who have EU workers on their payroll that have applied for the EU settlement scheme and the result has been returned limited leave, i.e. a visa end date? Should HR teams be drawing up new fixed term contracts to stay compliant?
The answer to that, in short, is going to have to be yes. But don't forget, there are appeals. They can appeal an outcome of a result. So if you have had a visa that has come back with limited leave, understand if the individual is appealing it, what type of contract do they have? Do you need to change the contract? I mean, if you don't have, if the individual is not going to be in the country at a certain time, or understand what the individual is going to do. Are they going to appeal? Are they going to leave the country? What is going to happen? Also, you need to have a look at how long the individual has been employed. Please be careful, and if you do have specific situations of that, take some legal advice, because obviously there are discrimination issues, the potential breach of contract issues, but there's other ways to get around that as well. So there are a number of ways that employment can be terminated without specifically saying it's the end of your visa type of thing. But but don't forget, if an individual is not legally capable and able and to work in the UK, then they shouldn't be in the UK, and therefore there's a to a certain degree there is a normal end to that employment relationship. So I get the difficulty that you're going to have with that. If you've got anyone over 2 years with that you need to change, then take legal advice. If anyone under 2 years, I mean, it's going to be a little bit easier because the employment rights have not kicked in. However, they do have discrimination rights. but every single person is going to be different. So the best thing I can say to you is take specific employment legal advice on that.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you. Barbara, what hiring trends are you seeing during lockdown? Are more people hiring from abroad? So I know we've touched on it, but are you seeing that there are more people doing that now?
Definitely. We're seeing companies going out to new countries and new markets to hire, and being more open-minded about where they hire that talent and where the skill needs to be. And I think that comes with working from home. I think the fact that people aren't going to be sitting by you either way makes a difference to that. And then, of course, it has been harder to travel, so people have been working from their home countries. We saw at the start of COVID that people would have traveled home to be with their family in their home country, and then found they weren't able to get back to the UK. And a lot of companies now are open to having them in their home country and working. And if they don't have an entity as well, they've gone through the employer of record route, so that they haven't had all the time and the expenses of having to set up an entity and everything else locally, that they can go to an employer of record, get a contract which is locally compliant, have a locally compliant payroll, locally compliant benefits, and everything set up for them quite easily.
Thanks, Barbara. Does this question make sense? Tell me if it doesn't. How or what do we need to look at when having assignments into and out of the UK?
I think, sorry, you go.
Go on, Barbara.
I think it depends on where you're going. I mean, and also how long. And if it's under the Schengen agreement that somebody is going for a short-term business trip, does it fit under the list of activities that they're allowed to do within that agreement in the EU? So I think it's very specific as to where that person is going and what's required and what type of role they're going to be carrying out in that jurisdiction. So I think it is very much on a case-by-case basis. Catherine, am I missing anything on that?
No, I think that's perfect, Barbara. The only thing I would add to that is, if the relationship or the understanding between the individuals is that you've got an individual in the UK going out to a different country for a specific period of time, do the employment rights in that country kick in? So, if it's a short-term period and it's a bit like a business trip, then chances are not. But just be careful of what those requirements are in each country. For instance, in Germany, it could apply. The employment legislation in Germany could apply for somebody, depending on what they are doing. Of course, they could apply to somebody who's landed in country on day one. So just make sure that you understand what those restrictions are and what is the reason for the travel. How long is the person traveling for? It may be worthwhile just to have a short-term fixed-term employment contract to that country, so that they are covered. But yeah, I mean, are they going to be living there? Do you need to issue payroll there? Things like that you just need to look at and understand, certainly if it's going to be longer than 3 months.
I agree. The worst thing you can do is assume your home country laws and everything to do with your home country will apply. And so many countries or companies get so caught on that they don't realize, and then an employee has a right or the authorities come in about something and they never realize that their home country law wasn't going to apply to that person.
Yeah, we've come across it on so many occasions where certainly, before COVID, people traveled to a specific country, and I think we've all seen it, in the news and articles about it. Somebody's traveled and they've been stuck in a country for 18 months. And they're still working. What happens there? So, in that situation, you should be having an employment contract within that country. They need to be paying social security. They need to have that country, medical protection, like we do in the UK. We have protection from the NHS, for anyone who comes into the country, or within reason. Certain people that come into the country, they do have cover under the NHS. It's the same in a lot of countries. There are social security contributions that are taken out of payroll, which then cover urgent medical care. So, just thinking about it from a bigger picture, yes, they could be traveling to the Bahamas. Sounds amazing. But, ultimately, if they've been there for a period of time, are they going to be allowed to even come into the country? Are they going to what's going to happen, when they are physically able to leave? What if they don't want to leave? I mean, you know, you need to weigh, or I know I wouldn't want to leave the Bahamas, but you need to figure out all those situations. And yeah, we have had situations, or I've known of situations as well, where individuals have just refused to go back home, and they want to stay wherever they've landed. So that has been a bit difficult, because global mobility, because of the home working life that we all live now, has just allowed that to explode, and a lot of companies are getting caught out by it, and companies can face huge tax bills from numerous countries if they don't have everything in place in order to manage those.
You're right. I mean, you could have a permanent establishment if you have a salesperson in a country and you don't realize there's just one person there selling, and all of a sudden you have this huge tax bill, or even people's tax residency. You know, when that kicks in a country is very important. I think you really do need advice in these things. I don't think it's something you can kind of hold off on and say, we'll see how it goes, you know.
Or if you found yourself in a situation where you've got an employee in the Bahamas, it just sounds like the best place to be right now, and you're happy with them working there and they don't want to come back, just reach out to us, and we'll be able to figure that out with you, whether we can help or whether we can't. We'll be able to guide you in you know, down the path that will hopefully give you an amicable resolution.
Maybe I'll get myself stuck in the Bahamas.
Let me know when you're going.
bit hell of a lot warmer than what we've had over the last 9 months, but there you go. Do we need we've got time for one more question, I think, so we're coming towards the end, but do we need a certificate of coverage or an A1 within the EU now that Brexit has happened?
It depends on the situation. Yeah, again, you're going to have to take specific advice, because it isn't 100% clear, so you will have to take specific advice on that. Unfortunately, I couldn't answer that from a hypothetical. I'd be here all day.
No, that's fine. We have had so many questions on this afternoon's webinar, so I think what we'll do is we'll obviously share these with you, and if we can have a look through them and then answer them offline. We've got some regarding sort of global mobility, which I think we've discussed previously, but are a little bit longer than 3 minutes to answer. Somebody has asked though, is there like a checklist for employers or a clear indication where they can find relevant forms? Is there somewhere on a government website that they can go, or is it a bit of searching and finding?
The government website is really good. So if you type in UK immigration, I don't know what the exact website is, but it's the UK government website. And then if you just put in there immigration for employers, there's a load of information on there to help you with information regards to settlement scheme, right to work checks. So it is all on there. I know that the specific EU settlement scheme is on there, because I've had to look at it for our business, and I've used that website significantly. So there's also got a good FAQ section on there, because again, every company is different, your requirements are different, so just have a look at that, and if you're unsure, then just reach out to an immigration lawyer and just ask for some guidance. It shouldn't be too costly to the business just to ask for some specific guidance, but I'd be surprised if you can't find it on the government website.
Okay, maybe if we can find that, we can share that with the follow-up email. But well, that's a nice long webinar all around Brexit and all the changes, and I'm sure we're going to end up running some more, because I feel like every time we speak about Brexit, there's just so much coming out, isn't there? And what do you reckon, the next 18 months, or it's just going to keep going and going and going?
Oh my gosh, I think with regards to the immigration system, we're going to see a lot of changes in the next 6, now that the borders seem to be loosely opening. So as soon as people are allowed to travel as and when they want, without COVID restrictions, I think we're going to see a lot more changes being made. So I think we're just going to have to see how COVID reacts and how we react to COVID, really.
And watch this space. Well, thank you so much. I always enjoy your webinars. They're so informative and so much information. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Catherine. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, is it okay if they sort of connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway,
really.
Thank you. Well, thanks once again. If you do have any questions that you want to send after the webinar, please feel free to send them on to me, and then I'll forward them on. As I said, the recording and the slides will be available. But thank you all once again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.